Tristan, and you are listening and watching Industrial Music Culture. My life growing up as a kid was great. I grew up on a farm in New Hampshire, and we had just a 25-acre farm, kind of rural, big barn, fields, endless freedom. It was pretty idyllic, to be honest. I used to build a lot of stuff like forts and various structures and guns, and not real guns, but like little. This is kind of how I got started making stuff, was on that farm. Yeah. I mean, other than that, just like, yeah, I had a good family. I had a really good group of friends. Like we were like, I was in some really nerdy after school programs, like one called Odyssey of the Mind, which actually I think it was called Olympics of the Mind, which was like this thing where you would get together and like compete and mixing theater and robotics and music. You know, like build robots that would like go around and complete different tasks. Um, I also started playing piano. Like my mom got me doing that. Um, so yeah. I didn't start listening to metal and industrial music until like high school. So there was a radio station called WUNH. It was like the local, UNH, University of New Hampshire, had like all the local concerts. So you would go. That's where I saw Fugazi in high school for $5, and I can't remember who else we saw there, but like lots of like emo shit from like the mid '90s. But as we were riding to school, I would say like '92 to '96, I was in high school, and two of my good friends, or three good friends, one of them who's now like my partner in this drum machines company, Adam Reed Erickson. He's like one of my best friends, and he got me he was playing Ministry. We were listening to like Sepultura, and yeah, Ministry. And then another friend, Shone, who's also a writer for like Decibel and some horror magazines, and also just an author in general. He was my bandmate, and he introduced me to Godflesh. It was Selfless, I think, the album. And I loved that album. It was much more guitar, sort of like guitar riff chuggy than some of the more, I guess, dancier industrial that they had. And I absolutely loved it. I have no reason to have liked that music from what I was listening to growing up from my parents, like folk music. And when I heard Godflesh, Melvins, Neurosis, His Hero Is Gone, Ministry, I just immediately, something clicked, And I remember calling the radio station when Sepultura, I know they're not industrial so much, but they do have some like additional instrumentation on like Roots, the album or whatever. And I called the radio station asking what the track was, and this snarky radio DJ was like, "That's Sepultura." You're like, well, you moron, I never felt like I was a industrial person, to be completely honest, because coming up I just like doom metal. I like slow stuff, and I always felt like Godflesh wasn't really industrial. Ministry, more was, but like I only really found out about all these industrial bands when I started getting booked by promoters for festivals that other industrial bands were on. And I'm like, oh, this is what industrial music is like. There's a whole genre, like, and then you get into like wave gothic Treffen, this like festival in Leipzig in Germany, where there's like, then you go way deep. There's like there's a whole history in Germany and Eastern Europe and of industrial culture that I feel very much like not a part of. I feel much more comfortable within like stoner doom crew with I don't know, just like hanging out, smoking weed and drinking beers and not the sort of fashion element of the industrial world was something I was not prepared for, and I still don't feel like I feel like an imposter. I started playing in bands when I was in high school, but I've been playing piano and like played the song for the eighth grade graduation with a singer. We did like some Billy Joel or Elton John stuff. Um, but then I had a band in high school. We started playing like Cure songs and the Black Sabbath track, and I was singing and playing piano or key synthesizer, which was kind of not the coolest instrument to play when you were in high school. Oh my God. It was one of these like pre-made Casio with the speakers built in kind of thing. I'd have to Google it. I don't even remember. It was like whatever they sold at it was Daddy's Junkie Music was the name of the the music store that was in Newington near Portsmouth, New Hampshire. That's not around anymore, but it was a real piece of work. It had like organs, strings, piano, and I didn't even think to plug it into like a guitar pedal or something to make it sound cooler. I wanted to play guitar, so I transitioned to playing guitar and bass. And I wanted to have like a two-person band, kind of like there was this band Godhead Silo that I really liked, and they were in Providence, Rhode Island, and they were kind of like Melvins. So yeah, that's I would say that was I would say the first band I was in, I was 16. I was in a lot of bands. I was in bands in high school and college. In college, more like metal, hardcore, and then I was in a band in Boston in the early 2000s, and I just started to like. It was just the same thing. You build a band up, and then somebody's got an issue. You got like a drummer that has got a kid, and then you've got another guitar player who smokes too much weed, or you've got like just like these problems. And so you write all these songs and you invest so much of your life into like this thing, and then it all gets blown up because of people. And of course, this was not a good thing for me to like realize is that I wanted to do everything myself, and so that I didn't have to depend on other people. And that's what Author and Punisher was. That's how we came up with the name. I wanted to have something that was like industrial, that was my thing. Um, yeah, so I didn't have to depend on other people. And I could just sit in a room with speakers and all these gadgets and just like make sound until I felt that it was right, and not have to make sort of concessions for like other people. And um, I'm back to like being okay with collaborating a little bit more than I used to. I always say it's like Godflesh, Neurosis, and the Melvins were like the bands that sort of had the biggest impact on me. Of course, that was just one sort of like that was sort of like what got me inspired to like, okay, I have this sound that I'm searching for now, like this tone of like, and I'm always searching for it, like this kind of gnarly dirge sawtooth, chainsaw kind of tone that every time on every album I kind of recreated a little bit. And I would say those types of bands kind of created that. But what happened in the late 90s and early 2000s is I started to like go to raves, and like listen to drum and bass and more, some experimental hip hop and sound systems, like sound system culture. That made a huge impact on me. And learning that, Marshall amps, like 4x12 Guitar Center sound systems were not sufficient for the kind of shit I wanted to do. I really wanted gnarly like bass, like aggressive bass. And when I would go to metal shows, it was all like this kind of like sizzly high end shit. But when you go to like drum and bass or dubstep or electronic shows, it's the bass just hit you hard. I was like, this shit is so much heavier than any metal show I could ever go to, you know, with the exception of some bands like Neurosis and Godflesh that had these sort of, they understood this. You know, Justin Broderick and Godflesh is a huge dub fan. He is all about like sound system culture, and when I've talked to him about it, he's schooled me on it and told me about, well, you have to check out this group, check out this group, and it's amazing to hear these guys who've crossed over these genres. So yeah, making my own sound systems and building my speakers. I sold actually the Mesa Boogie dual rectifier guitar cabinet that I had and built my own. That was like one of the first things I did when I got to art school. And then I built subwoofers, and then I built these three-way speakers, and then, you know, I hook up all the amps and the crossovers myself. So I like crafted my own tone, you know, that I wanted. And you know, when you go to a club now and you see somebody who's got like a certain sound system, it's really disappointing sometimes. For me anyway. That doesn't happen too much. It doesn't happen as much anymore, but it's like, oh man, fans are not going to be stoked when they hear like what I want to play through this tiny little system. The circuit bending is one thing. I would say I never really got into circuit bending. I was a mechanical engineer. That's what I like went to school for. And so I really liked robotics when I was in school. I really wanted to build, I mean, just like aliens, anything, you know, the series Aliens, like growing up, that was like my favorite movie. So I wanted to like make stuff that was, you know, I wanted to build robots, and I realized it was called mechatronics, the thing I wanted to do, which was like little gadgets. So you would like take motors and like build like, I don't know, and it cycled into like automation. So like factory automation is like what I worked on as that's like what my focus has been in my career pretty much. Well, my tech career. So I like worked for 4 years in Boston for these like automation companies, building like stuff for clean rooms, like to automate like silicon wafer chip devices. And then I got sick of that, so I went back to art school, and I wanted to build sculpture with tech. So like, and I had a professor who I'd worked for who was at MIT. I wasn't at MIT, but he was at MIT and RPI around the school, and he sort of like was building sculpture using a lot of tech and microcontrollers and like circuits and like electronics. And I knew a little bit of that, and I also knew how to make mechanical designs and use CAD modeling software like SolidWorks and stuff like that. So I had worked for him, and he kind of guided me to go to art school. So I did. I went back to art school, left like an engineering job, sold a car that I had bought with my engineering like salary, and started over again pretty much. It was like the best move I ever made. I loved it so much. That's where I started making drum machines. Like I spent a year building like shitty sculpture. Well, I'm not gonna say they were bad. I was trying to like make kinetic sculpture, like things that would move using like robotics and automation. And then I was also playing my metal stuff, but more industrial guitar and drum machine. And then I sort of like melded the two together, and I built this like throttle. I tried to build like a control room of all these machines that you could move stuff. And that's how I got into it. And I was using Arduino pretty much. And now I've moved on to like using Teensy, and there's another one called Daisy. These microcontrollers and like encoders and potentiometers and buttons, and that's just what the simple ways to encode the motion into the computer and get it out into sound. It's a long path. This is Author and Punisher's 20th year. So I went to art school in 2004, and that's when I started Author and Punisher, and released in 2005. I released the first album. See the gray hair? First tour, I can't remember exactly, but I would say Run Alceropoulos was probably on there. There was it was organized by me and my friend Braden, who's um, who produced the Beastland album with me. He's like a longtime friend. He does lights with like Neurosis when they've been out, and he's got his own experimental noise project called Exo Endo. Um, but he sort of had a band called Tarantula Hawk, which was a Neurot recordings band, and he knew the sort of West Coast venues that because I had a like maybe a festival booked, and I was like, okay, we need to let's do a tour, and so he knew some booking agents, and so we played a place called the I think I'm gonna is it the Rose Josephine or the Rosaline? I can't remember the name. It's in Seattle. It was an underground noise place that we played, and then we got in his pickup truck. He had like a Dodge pickup truck, and we hauled a U-Haul trailer, and he slept. I slept in the back one night, and he slept in the front. And we had my huge disc. This was when my gear was like hundreds of pounds. A big disc, everything was hundreds of pounds. So it was like we got to venues and people didn't know what to think, you know, these big giant discs that you have to put a pole through and two people have to put it up on there. And I wasn't using a lot of keyboards. I was just using these things, and it was mostly drone noise. I wasn't playing songs like I do now as much live. So yeah, that's what it was. It was like maybe 2 weeks, no money. And then I did that so many more times. I mean, that was 2007. I played a lot of local shows before that. It was 2007, and I just kept going out and doing that same thing. I would go out, and then I got invited to go play Brazil. My partner and wife is from Brazil, and so we went down there and had a couple shows. And then I got the show in like Venice in like England, and so we like did a tour where we would go play Venice and like do 3 shows and just like make it up as I didn't have an agent, and I would go over here and then play some shows. And then my guitar player now, Doug, had a band called Life Once Lost. It's more of a metalcore band. And in 2012, he took my band out, and that was sort of my first like national tour where we did the whole U.S. And after that, things got rolling, and I got a booking agent and got on a label, and things started to develop more. I sort of got onto a circuit of like actual, clubs, I just was playing DIY stuff on the West Coast and down, and there was one in High Mayhem Festival down in New Mexico. That was like another sort of noisy, yeah. Yeah, I surf. I haven't surfed much since the pandemic because I could sort of started hiking a lot, and I just hike all the time, and that's actually sort of turned into every weekend I'm doing these. Like I just posted about it, like Border Angels, which is Borderlands Relief Collective, which is basically just water drops for migrants that are crossing from across going through different parts of the fence. And so we drop water, and that's something I do every weekend, which is sort of hiking plus outreach. That's something I love doing. I love meeting new people through that, and but I love hiking. When I'm on tour now, like if I get somewhere early, I'll go and hike wherever we are, France and Sweden, or Doug and I, my guitar player and I love finding saunas. We'll always like if there's a sauna in town, we'll like schedule it around our day, and we'll go do the sauna for like 2 hours. Um, that's like one of our absolute favorite things to do. What else? Camping. I got a van. We go camp all the time. So, yeah. I play video games. Yeah, Death Stranding, hiking, Pelican case fetish. That's probably one of my favorite things. I have a lot of Pelican cases. I like machining. I like figuring out how to get things in my Pelican cases for tour. And Death Stranding, that game combined all of my interests into one form. I love that fucking game. I was a confessor build in Elden Ring. I'm not. That game is so hard. It took me a long time. I'm embarrassed to say how many hours I put into it, and I won't share that because I'll get trolled pretty hard. But um, I more or less finished it. I'm still got like maybe one more boss to finish, but I loved Last of Us. Um, I played Sekiro, didn't beat it. Dark Souls 3, didn't beat it. Had a lot of fun though. I just play. I almost play. I play most games that come out that are like, like that. The Assassin's Creed stuff. It's just kind of like mellows me out. For some reason, right now we were playing Diablo, but I sort of trailed off on that. I was like, man, this is getting kind of repetitive. Pizza. I make pizza at home. That's another one of my hobbies. I've started making pretty serious Neapolitan style pizza. We grow up bananas. These little guys. They're very cute. Um, I mean, it's got to be like German beer, Helles Lager, Augustiner. My dog Uli just turned 13. She's an Australian Shepherd. She's a maniac. She just grabbed a cup of yogurt. Uli, Ulli. Yeah, my father was really into like playing guitar, and we always it was a music family. They would get together with the neighbors and jam and stuff. So I was like, I didn't do it as much then. I was a little like embarrassed because I was like more of a metalhead, but I certainly do now. And I played piano at the Christmas party this year with the family, which was pretty cool. I'm learning the Charlie Brown Christmas book. Portishead, Neurosis, His Hero's Gone. Okay, yeah, three favorite industrial bands: Godflesh, Neurosis. Oh God. See, I'm gonna fuck this up, but I'm just gonna say Fear Factory because it's not really industrial. So many different types of venues. Like I feel like for me, like touring is such an adventure that it's not always good, There's so many terrible places and like everything from the dingiest, saddest place you could ever play. I've played it, to like the biggest, or just like bigger, venues with bigger bands that feel very, that also feel sad, because they're like corporate. But I would say like in Rome, we played this old dog track that had been taken over by these sort of like anti-fascist squatter crew. Like, do you remember this band Zoo? They're like a Italian band. It had like a saxophone player. It was kind of noisy. It's kind of John Zorn, but they have a drummer and Gabe Serbian, the sort of rest in peace ex-drummer from the Locust. We passed away a couple of years ago, but he played with them. And anyway, I played a show with them there, and it was so rad. It was like they had transformed this dog track, which is like a weird history on its own, And in Rome, like near these train tracks, and they served this big meal for us, and that was a special location, I don't even remember people being at the show. I just remember like the whole process of like eating dinner with this crew of people and then walking around the grounds and like snaking through these old tunnels that are all from a time ago, I wouldn't say this is one of the better venues I've played, but well, let me just name a couple more. Arena in Vienna, I really like. It's a club complex, but it's an old squat. It's like proper old buildings that have stayed alive. A lot of the old squats in Europe have like closed down just because governments are cracking down on sort of the DIY spots. That one is rad, and people show up, like industrial folks show up. That's called Arena. that Rhinoceropolis, I love those venues, and I sort of like made a detour into doing like proper venues, and now we're like moving away from squats like in Europe because I wanted to play proper clubs. Now I feel like, man, proper clubs are annoying. They're too like aseptic and like dry. I want to go back and play like squats because there's like proper. I don't know. It's just like gnarlier. People are like up for it. I played Dresden once, and I show up there with the the tour manager that I had. It was just me and him. It was like the last show of the tour, and this is just a story. But there's this industrial guy. He's like, and he actually booked Three Teeth after me. This was like, I think this might have been like 2015 or something. And we show up, and he's got this huge old venue, and he shows up and he's got this long green overcoat and these like black boots. He kind of is like, he looks very German industrial, like kind of in not the best like way, and I'll get there. But he's got the hair. He doesn't speak any English, so the guy who was with me speaks German, and he's like, okay. So he showed us the venue. They were just sort of like they had to put a curtain up, so we're only playing in one corner of the venue, and so we're like, okay, cool. So we're gonna get some food, but he gave us a little tour, and he took us down into the basement. And it was like these old Nazi tunnels where they would have like these cars underneath, where they would like transport weapons, like these tunnels underneath the city. So he showed us that, but he was like very proud of it. And then he asked me, like, he was driving us around Dresden, and he was talking about Putin and how Putin was gonna take over the Europe again, and it will be a great day for um, Europe. And I was getting this as a translation through my agent or tour manager at the time. And then he asked me what kind of food we wanted, and I always like to have local food. I don't want to have like Vietnamese food in Dresden. I want to have like, oh, what's your like local schnitzel like, and like have a local beer. So he's like, oh, local. So he took us to this place, and we sat down, and there's like a bunch of punkers in there, and I ordered a beer, and it came out, it was a big Stein, like one of those old school ones that's like stone, and it looks like it's like ceramic, and it's got some weird writing on it. And they bring it over to me, and uh, I went to lift it up, and it was like made of like steel and lead, like you couldn't lift it. And the whole place started laughing. And then we realized it was a Nazi bar. Like we were full on like in a total like, and I couldn't speak German, so like my guy who was with me was noticing all this because he looked at the patches, and all the patches were like these nationalist, like right wing. But anyway, the food was delicious. Those Nazis make really good schnitzel, but I was like, fuck. So then the rest of the night we had to play the fucking show, and he didn't really share all this information with me so until like the end of the night. I'm a total leftist. I'm a I would say like I feel like I'm a socialist. Yeah, absolutely. That's another thing. That's a yeah. I guess you could say I'm a democratic socialist. I mean, I'm leaning towards yeah, I was like a Bernie person, and I I volunteer for various things in town involving migrant outreach, and I'm not. Uh, yeah, I feel very strongly. I've been involved with some right wing metal people in the past, and having to cut ties with them. It's there. It's around. Oh, I would say every album. Honestly, the only other album that I had anybody play on, I had a guitar player like on my first album, but I pretty much played. I might have this wrong, but yeah, Drumish. Yeah, the only album that I brought somebody in was was a guitar player on the last album. And then I also had, the guys from Tool like played on a couple songs, and my friend Jason did some electronics. But and now we're writing a new album with together. So well, I mean, I'm still sort of like author and punishing it, but I'm bringing like we're gonna have some writing sessions together and see how that goes. It was about a year and a half ago. She reached out on wanting to use some of my machines for some festivals. So I sort of like got them ready for her, and she came to LA, and we spent a day in a practice space and sort of got a configuration that would work for her to sort of like use in between her songs, her normal set of like her hits. She likes to go over and do like noise. So so yeah, that was probably three different shows last fall, or sorry, 2022. And then she had a big show at the Armory where I built the sort of CDJ setup, which was like these knobs and throttles and a big fader. And that was a much longer project. It took me 6 months to build. And that was for her. And that was rad. I got to hang out with her a fair amount, and she's great. She's super down to earth while not being down to earth at the same time. Like, she's all over the place, but when you lock in with her on like tech and like when we're sitting in front of a laptop and like working through the gear, it's just like it's super rad. It was a life-changing experience. I loved working with her, and it's different for me to build something for somebody else and work and think about somebody else using it. And it was really fun. I loved working with her. It was super chill. She just wants to play with stuff. I always felt like it was a positive experience, and I hope to keep it going. We're still working on making some improvements to what we already built. So yeah, I just want to thank all just the weirdos and innovative, creative ones that have supported me for 20 years. This is the 20th year. This tour coming up there's two tours coming up. There's gonna be one in the summer in Europe, and there's one on the East Coast. The first show's in Boston at Sonya. That's kind of where I'm from originally, that area. So yeah, we've got a little surprise for everybody. We're doing a Rosalia cover that'll be coming out first day of the tour. I'm not going to say what it is yet, but there'll be, yeah, hope you enjoy it. Yeah, I was thinking about this. I think lessons I've learned over the last 20 years would be that you should make the music that you want to hear in your heart, that you're sitting and you're just grinding it out in the studio and practicing, and make that music. Don't make the music that you think people want to hear or that you think is gonna help your career. Just keep grinding away with the thing that's in your head, in the back of your head. I mean, there's nothing worse than sitting in front of a synthesizer and diving through menus after menus after menus. That's the worst to me. So like the fact that you have something that you can just play with, that's, I think it's like people spend so much time like with the getting their equipment set up that they never actually write. That's what you need to do, is like sit there and play and like express yourself. That's why I'm not a big fan of like synthesizers, and I just like software because it's quick. Just get it going. Start writing music as quick as you can. And I had these Electron synths for a while, and I have a couple. I'm like, okay, I don't need any more. I have one I can make a bunch of sounds with, but I just love VSTs. Arca is a big VST user. She's not. I mean, she does use some like Moogs and things like that for sure, but yeah, she's all about just presets and loading shit up, and getting, just being creative and like on the fly. Like it doesn't have to be like, oh, I have to use these $3,000 synthesizers. That was really cool. No, that was, it was just cool to see her doing that, because I'm like, oh, this is like legendary producers. It's just like going through Ableton, like basic shit, and making amazing sounds. I would say I'm far more digital. I I've never been a big fan of putting um contact mics on stuff and banging on it. I That's not to say that I haven't seen people that have done it really well. I think it's just, for me, it's almost just like I'm really into like getting my sort of interface right, and then having a sound that has maximum effect. It's almost lazy, because if you put a thing, a contact mic onto something, or a microphone on it, you're kind of stuck with it, you know? Whereas if it's so much easier if I just can replace the sample, you know? Yeah, I mean, it's what I like about guitar is that it's organic, and I love the sort of mistakes and the sort of and that's what I wanted to make, was try to make electronic instruments that were not just push button grids of buttons that you're stuck in the grid, you know. That's the whole reason I build Author and Punisher stuff, is that I wanted to be able to organically play electronic music live at my own pace. I do play to a click track often now, but I can sit there and say, okay, I'm going to start the song now and start playing the drums and play stuff with my left hand and sing. And I don't need to play to a click, and I can, it's sort of more organic, even though it may look more robotic, or you know, I don't know, technical. It's very organic. It's organic electronic music, and I think that's something that is missing, you know, in, fuck it, let's go there. It's a huge thing that's missing in industrial music right now. I think I've just seen too many bands that have one person sitting behind a bunch of gear and then somebody singing. And they're really just pressing play and adding effects to things. There's nothing wrong with that. They've been doing this forever. But I don't want to sound like the old guy who's like, back in my day, because I feel like it's always been like that. And it's something that frustrates me with industrial music, is that it oftentimes not very live, and you're kind of getting the same thing you heard last night, you know. And it's sexy, you know, it's very stylish, but how visceral is it really? Could it be more visceral? Is it just a financial thing? Are people like, don't have the money to have multiple band members? I get that, you know. But you know, be creative, come up with different ways to make it more live, you know. Get frustrated when there's like some band that's all style, they're sexy as hell, they're doing their thing, they're fucking, you know, and they're blowing up, and their music's okay, right? And but I guess like, you know, in a genre that is as small as ours compared to other, you know, it's like all tides lift boats. So I cheer other bands on, because I'm happy they're making music. They're not fucking out, and hopefully, I don't know, they could be doing worse things. It's just so I try to just be supportive most of the time, but I do like to poke, you know, every once in a while, and say, hey, I think we can do better. You know, I think we can be a little bit more creative and a little more innovative, and like take some more chances, because, you know, there's more than just looking good on stage, I think. Thank you for watching Industrial People. This is Tristan from Author and Punisher. We are here for you.